25 years teaches us on the 2026 immigration outlook. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ron Hoppe. I am the CEO of Worldwide Health Staff Solutions, and it's my pleasure to be leading this presentation today. I hope that 2026 is off to a great start for everyone. Our team here at Worldwide Health Staff Solutions is very optimistic and very much looking forward to the new year, and I hope you are as well. Each year for the last number of years, we've done webinar presentations early in January, always with a focus of looking forward to what we anticipated in the upcoming year. What do we expect to happen with the visa bulletin, other things like immigration policy, market demand, etc. So this year, I thought we would take a slightly different approach. And what we would do is actually take a look back and just remind ourselves of, sort of the trajectory that international recruitment, healthcare recruitment has been on for the last quarter century, and what lessons we might be able to learn from that, from our past experience, that would help inform what we expect to see happen in 2026. In preparing the materials for the presentation today, I was reminded of the many different experiences that we've had here at Worldwide Health Staff and that I've had since founding the company all the way back in 1998. And I found taking some time to reflect on how things have evolved over the years only provided me with further encouragement and optimism for what's to come. So with that, we'll jump in just a moment here. But before we do, as always, I would ask if you're joining us live today, please take a moment and using the chat section on your screen, just drop us a very short note, just letting us know where you're joining us from today. It's always great to see the engagement that we have across many different countries. And also, if you have questions or comments that come to mind, as we work our way through the presentation today, please use the chat section on your screen to send those to us. My colleague, Artley, is joining me on this presentation today, and she will help walk us through a Q&A session towards the end of our presentation today, and we will do our very, very best to answer as many questions as we can. Please remember, this is not the forum where we're able to answer detailed case-specific questions. Those should be directed to your case manager if you are a Worldwide Health Staff applicant. So with that being said, let's dive right in. And I thought before we start taking a look back over many years, it would be helpful just to ground ourselves by taking a moment to reflect on where are we at today? Where are we at today when it comes to all things international recruiting? So I think there's a few highlights that I'd like to call out. I think as we sit here in January of 2026, I think it's fair to say that there is increased uncertainty about U.S. immigration programs. Immigration in the United States remains an extremely high-profile issue. Literally, it's in the news every day. But I would like to begin today by drawing a very clear distinction between what is currently in the news on a daily basis and legal employment-based immigration. Much of the immigration news these days is focused on the U.S.'s focus, I will say, on immigration enforcement, on illegal entries into the country, refugee cases, asylum cases, etc. I think everyone here is also going to be aware, at least to some degree, about the recent developments with the H-1B visa program and the implementation of a new $100,000 processing fee, as well as a new process by which the lottery will be conducted that can be concerning if your primary focus is H-1B. At the same time, and we'll dig into this a little deeper as we go along, it is very important to note that the employment-based immigration program, also known as the permanent residency or green card program, continues on uninterrupted, unabated, unchanged. And as I said, we'll dig into that a little bit deeper. But there certainly is uncertainty, and we look forward to addressing that uncertainty and hopefully providing you with some greater clarity as we go along. So that's one of the considerations when we look at the current environment. I think the second one is to recognize that processing dates over the course of 2025 have continued to slowly but surely back up. Over 2025, processing dates, the visa bulletin, has become extended. Today, we find we're dealing with visa processing times of about 36 months. And when we have this condition where the number of applications in process exceeds the number of available visas in the current fiscal year, right, we get this backlog that's also referred to as retrogression. So that is part of the reality of what we're dealing with today. I think a third important consideration when we consider the environment today is the reality that the US nursing shortage is not going away. So we have this increased uncertainty around what's happening with US immigration policy, US immigration practice. We have processing dates that are more backlogged currently than they have been in the post-pandemic era for the most part. And we continue to have an environment where there is a nursing shortage that is not going away. So hopefully just grounding ourselves with where we're at today will help us have a better and deeper appreciation of where we've been over recent years and over many years. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So on this slide, I've summarized visa processing times since 1998. You can see on this graph, we've summarized them in 3-year increments. And this chart in particular reflects the processing times as of July 1st of each of the noted years. And the reason for sharing this graph is to just give you a very simple visual representation that shows that visa processing times fluctuate over time. So when you look, if we start on the left-hand side of this chart, you'll see on July 1st, 1998, which is also the date on which we founded Worldwide Health Staff Solutions, right? Visa processing times were about 36 months. Okay, so even a little bit greater than where they are today. And then as we got into the early 2000s, 2001, 2004, 2007, we had a period of 7 or 8 years where essentially the visa bulletin was current. That was a good time in terms of visa processing times. But if you're old enough to recall what was happening in the world, particularly in that 3 years around 2007, right, was the last great global financial crisis. And while the processing times were current, employers weren't recruiting. So just an interesting sort of look back at what was happening at that time. So as we got out of the early 2000s and we got to 2010 and onwards, we encountered a drastic retrogression that lasted the better part of 6 years, where you can see processing times were between 82 and 80 months. Okay, that's 7 years, right? 6, 7, 8 years retrogression. As we jumped forward and we got into 2019, the priority dates essentially returned close to current. In the midst of the pandemic and even coming out of the pandemic a little bit into 23, essentially we were current. And today we find ourselves at approximately 30 months of processing time. So you can see over the last 25 or so years, 27 years, at various times, visa processing times have been longer, and at various times they've been shorter. The one key takeaway I would like you to have from this slide is that over the full duration of these years, whether it's 1998 or 2007 or 2016 or 2025, nurse petitions were being filed, nurse petitions were being approved, and registered nurses from abroad were arriving in the US without interruption over this period of time. Depending when your application was filed, it may have taken you a longer period of time. It may have taken you a shorter period of time. But there are thousands of nurses whose petitions were filed somewhere between 2010 and 2016, who have now been in the US for a number of years, many years in some cases, have established successful careers, and are benefiting greatly from their courage and willingness and desire to take their applications forward, even at times when the processing times were greatly extended. So a couple of things hopefully you'll find helpful from this slide. Again, just providing a perspective, looking back over many years to hopefully give us some insight into some confidence as to what might be happening here in 2026. So that's visa processing times. If we can go to the next slide, please. The other thing that has happened over the last 25 years is that getting licensed in the United States has become much easier. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just suggesting that it's easier than it was. And again, I think there's probably some individuals that are joining us on this webinar today that weren't even born 27 years ago when Worldwide Health Staff started. But when I look back in terms of what it used to take for an international nurse to become licensed in the US, in 1998, there were no international NCLEX testing centers. Some of you may remember something called the CGF&S qualifying exam or the CGF&S exam. And in 1998, nurses would have to take this exam. It was considered a predictor exam of your likelihood to pass the NCLEX. Although it wasn't NCLEX, it was accepted by USCIS as part of their requirements for immigration to the US. So nurses would take the CGF&S exam, their permanent residency application would be processed, and then they would arrive in the US as a permanent resident. And now we're faced with the task of having to take and pass the NCLEX exam. And during that time, what would happen is nurses would arrive. Some would pass the NCLEX on their first attempt, some would not, meaning that they were unable to get licensed and meaning that they were unable to work as a registered nurse, at least for a period of time, if they were able to pass the exam on subsequent attempts. So far more complex additional steps, and certainly I would suggest a far riskier path to registered nurse licensure in the US. In 2005, we had the first NCLEX, International NCLEX Test Centers open, which was just a revolutionary change in the international recruitment process, making it possible for candidates in some countries, or making it possible for candidates to attend at testing centers in some countries to write the US NCLEX exam, which in turn then one, provided them with the assurance that they would be able to get licensed as a registered nurse, all other things being equal. And it took away the risk and the uncertainty around being in the US and not passing the exam. So that was a massive, massive change in 2005 for the better. And as we look back to 2025, there were now NCLEX test centers established in 18 different countries. I believe that still we need additional testing centers. But when I think about 2005 and there just being a handful to now being 18 test centers virtually in all parts of the world, we've come a long way. And while I don't have it on this slide, a major development that we're expecting in 2026 is that the US NCLEX exam is going to become available online, so that nurses will not have to travel to actual testing centers. Under certain circumstances, they'll be able to take the NCLEX exam from their home location or close to their home location, opening up accessibility to the exam to many, many more qualified applicants. So when we look at the landscape and the environment as it related to testing and getting licensed, great progress has been made over the last 25 plus years. And we're looking for another major milestone in 2026 when the NCLEX exam may become available online. So that's a bit of an overlook on the licensure piece. So let's go to the next slide and take a look at how the employment-based visa program has evolved over the same period of time. When we talk about employment-based visas, you might be more familiar with the term EB3 visa, permanent resident visa, green card visa. These terms are all used interchangeably. So when we look at 1998, we can see that there was 140,000 employment-based visas available at that time. Likewise, in 2011, we had the same number of visas available. And lo and behold, in 2025, we had the same number of visas available at that time as we did in 1998. So how should we interpret this? And I think as I reflect on the fact that the number of available visas each year has stayed the same, for me, I would conclude that this is a good news, bad news story. The good news, the very good news, is that this program, the EB3 program, the employment-based program, is very well established. You can see just from the information here. In fact, the EB3 program, the employment-based visa program, in its current form, has existed for just over 30 years. The program is very, very stable. It is, the outcomes are predictable. If you file a properly prepared application without any misrepresentations, and you are being sponsored by a bona fide employer, US employer, as a registered nurse, I'm never going to say you have a 100% chance of approval, but you have a virtual 100% chance of approval. So the program is well established, it's stable, the outcomes are predictable. On the not so good news side of things is a lot has changed in the world and in the US and in the US workforce since 1998 that would very strongly support the number of visas being, the annual number of visas being increased. The population of the US is higher than it was 27 years ago. The workforce demographics have changed significantly. The US population overall is aging, which means the workforce overall is aging. And when we consider that dynamic in the context of healthcare, we see the demand for healthcare services increasing while we see the average age of the workforce increasing as well. So we have the demand for services increasing and the supply of available workers decreasing. This is creating a supply-demand imbalance. So other sort of positive aspects of this program, I think, as we go into 2026, is this program is not controversial in any way, shape, or form. There's no opposition to skilled professional people entering the United States on a permanent residency basis. These are individuals and their immediate family members that are coming to the US with the intention of integrating into US life, establishing a future for themselves and their families, their children. So despite everything that you hear going on around US immigration, controversies, etc., the program that is responsible for probably 98 or 99% of all international nurses process for arriving in the US remains stable. It continues to produce predictable outcomes. And while we wish there was additional visas available, and we're working to that end along with our industry colleagues, the good news that I would ask that we focus on is that this program remains functional. It remains functional as it was in 1997 when processing times were 36 months. It remains functional as it was in 2016 when processing times were in the 80 plus months. And it remains operational and functional as it has been in the years since the pandemic has ended. Okay, so let's now take a look back at one other aspect of the topic for today, and that is the reality that the U.S. nursing shortage has existed. It has existed over many years, and it continues to exist today. When we start, I was looking back as I was preparing for this, and in 1998, July 1st, 1998 is when we started Worldwide Health Staff Solutions. And on that same date, coincidentally, there was a headline in the Los Angeles Times talking about how the shortage of nursing was impacting and undermining hospitals' ability to provide quality care. So as far back as 1998, there was a shortage of nursing that was widely recognized. In fact, it was recognized by Congress at that time that in 1998 passed into law something called the Nursing Relief for Disadvantaged Areas Act. I believe it was titled the H-1C visa at the time. This was a time-limited program. I think it went on for 4 or 5 years. It was very limited in its scope, but back as far as 1998, it was even recognized by elected officials in the U.S. that there were significant issues in the nursing workforce, such that it was appropriate to intervene with this legislation. The nursing shortage continued to evolve over the years. I think 2011 was really a big turning point where you started to see many studies, many scholarly research articles being published related to the US healthcare workforce, the nursing workforce. And really, this was a time when alarms were starting to be sounded on issues such as the aging workforce, the aging population, the future demand for healthcare. So as we kind of got into this 2011, despite visa processing times, I recall there was still fairly significant volumes of recruiting going on at that time. That brings us to kind of where we are today, 2025, 2026. The actual estimate on the number of nursing vacancies varies widely from just under 100,000 to at 500,000. From my reading of various reports, I would conclude for myself that currently the number of open positions in the US is somewhere just slightly above 200,000 at any point in time. And that number continues to slowly but surely increase. So when we think about will there be a demand for international nurses in 2026 and 2027, again, I think it's instructive to look back at that particular question and how it's evolved over the years. And I think doing that gives us a clear indication and a clear insight that the nursing shortage we have today is going to be with us for the long foreseeable future, and that it is something that U.S. healthcare employers will continue to be challenged with, and it will create additional opportunities for international nurses for many years to come. So that's a look back at sort of the key component parts of international recruitment, both from the applicant's perspective as well as from a U.S. Healthcare employer's perspective. So let's then go to the next slide and start to summarize some of the things that we've touched on here today, and start to answer for ourselves the question, what lessons can we learn from the past? And what do our past experiences tell us about where we are at today and where we're likely to be at a year from now and 2 years from now and even beyond? So the first thing that I take away is that the U.S. employment-based immigration program or system is consistent, it's reliable, it continues to function as intended, and that any concerns that may exist around the program from a policy perspective, will it continue, et cetera, I think can be addressed in a very positive way. And we have every reason, you have every reason to expect that the legal employment-based immigration program to the United States is going to carry on in its current form. And hopefully we'll see the number of annual visas increased to help deal with some of the backlog. Very important to bear that in mind. I think the second thing that we can learn as we look back over time and reflect on where we're at today is we can clearly see that visa processing times have and will fluctuate, right? We're at a certain point in time today. Nobody knows what the visa processing times are going to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. But what we do know, going back to the first point, is that those applications that are in process, they continue to be processed. There's no debate or no argument in the U.S. From a public policy perspective on whether these types of visas should continue. They do continue. So visa processing times have and will continue to fluctuate. And the U.S. nursing shortage is real and it's not going away, which means there will continue to be new opportunities for qualified international nurses to pursue their goal of living and working in the United States. So I think these are fundamental to applicants both that have existing applications in process, as well as those applicants rather, who may just be at the very front end of their immigration journey, maybe still deciding on whether or not this is the right time or the right opportunity to get a U.S. immigration application started for themselves. So with that, let's go to the next slide and let's explore those questions in some detail. So considering all this information that we've just shared and considered, looking back over many years, reflecting on where we're at today, I think the right question to ask is, what does all of this mean today, right? I'm an applicant, and I'm wanting to know kind of what this means for me today. So we've talked again multiple times about how the legal employment-based immigration process to the U.S. remains open. I would add to this point a very, very important tip or very important information for those applicants that have not yet started their immigration journey, and it's this. The immigration system works essentially on a first in, first out basis. That means an application that is received by USCIS on Monday, all things being equal, is going to be completed and have a visa issued before an application that's filed on Thursday or Friday. Put another way, applications filed in January are going to be ahead in the processing queue of those filed in June, July, and August, as an example. You as an applicant cannot file an I-140 employment-based immigration application on your own. That requires an employer sponsor. But many employers are actively recruiting international nurses right now today, January 2026. We here at Worldwide Health Staff Solutions continue to work with many employers across the full spectrum of healthcare and are conducting interviews regularly, if not on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis. So the immigration process continues to work. And if you've not yet started an immigration application and you may be hesitant to do so, it's important that you understand that regardless of what the processing times are, right, the sooner you get started, the sooner you will have a visa issued. Okay. Next point is we don't know, right? We don't know how long it's going to take for your application to be processed or for your application to be finalized. And it's always been that way, right? There's never been a point in time where someone could say, if you file a petition on this date, you will have your visa on that date. And again, when if we consider the reality that, let's say a petition is filed this morning, January 2026, and we have visa processing times of approximately 30 months. That does not mean that that petition filed today necessarily is going to take 30 months to be completed. there's a new visa bulletin next month, and the month after that, and the month after that, and there's a new visa bulletin every month. And in those visa bulletins, the actual processing time could get shorter. It could also get longer. If you go back, and it's very easy to find, just search visa bulletin and then month and year. And if you track, those priority dates on a monthly basis over any period of time, you will see that they get longer and they get shorter. And you can see that from the 27-year summary that I provided earlier in our presentation. This comes back to my earlier point of first in, first out, right? The sooner a petition is filed, all other things being equal, right, the sooner that application will be completed and a visa will be issued. So I think these are the key things to remember. And if you do have an application that's in process, maybe it's been in process for a while, for you also, the time at which your visa may actually be issued, it could be on the timeline that's currently indicated in the visa bulletin, or it could also get shorter, or it could be extended depending on what further visa bulletins indicate. But if you have an application that's pending and your application has reached let's say, the NVC fee bill stage, whether you're working with Worldwide Health staff or not, I would very, very strongly encourage you to ensure that you have your visa screen certificate in hand. In the event that processing dates were to jump forward, you don't want to find yourself with a current priority date and unable to complete the embassy interview requirements. So just something for your consideration. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I've touched on some of these things, some of these topics, depending on where you are at on your immigration journey, right? If you're just thinking about getting started, right? First in, first out. We get questions here a lot. Is this the right time to start an application, or should I wait till the priority dates get current? The answer is don't wait. That's not going to help you. It's only going to hurt you, right? First in, first out if you're thinking about starting a new application. If you do have a pending application in process, be prepared. Prepare yourself to successfully complete that process. We've seen it in the past where there's been an unexpected move forward in the visa bulletin, and applicants did find themselves having current priority dates, but not being able to fulfill the requirements of the embassy interview and being delayed to try and catch up with that process. And you certainly don't want that to happen to you. If you're not sure where to start or what to do next, the main thing I would say in this regard is that you are obtaining information and answers to your questions from reliable and trustworthy sources, right? Everybody jokes that because it's on the internet, it must be true. That is a joke, because just because it's on the internet, there's no way that it's necessarily true. So I would be very cautious on making decisions based on information that you're finding on online discussion forums, various online posts, etc. If you're working with a credible recruitment agency, they should be able to very clearly address any concerns that you may have. If you're working directly with an attorney, certainly they will be able to assist you. And our team here at Worldwide Health Staff Solutions is always available to support any applicant, whether they're currently in process with us or not, to provide them with the best possible information that they would need to make an informed decision as to what would be in their best interest going forward. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, right, I would simply leave you with this thought, and that thought is you can do it. Absolutely, you can do it. Despite all of the issues and factors that we've touched on today, the current uncertainty around some aspects of the immigration process, you can do it. Believe in yourself, and as importantly, believe in the process. I've been doing this work, and our team has been doing this work for 27 years. At times it's gone faster, at times it's gone slower, but the process doesn't fail. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. You don't know, I don't know in life generally, and we certainly don't know about the visa bulletin, but we can't let that uncertainty stop us from moving forward and from taking action, right? When I think back over the course of even just my career, the number of times that I've taken a step or had to take a step, not knowing exactly what was next, while it was maybe a little bit scary at the time. Looking back at it now, we would not nearly be in the position that we're at. We would not have made the progress that we've made and achieved the goals that we've achieved if we didn't take these steps of, we'll call it faith, right? These steps of faith going forward, given that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And just a reminder, and I have found this to be true over the course of my career, and that is the greatest accomplishments require the greatest effort. And I think that axiom is very applicable and applies to anyone that is an international clinician, whether you're thinking of starting your immigration journey or whether you're partway through your immigration journey. Don't give up. Persistence, commitment and persistence are key and will be greatly rewarded when you complete the process. The greatest accomplishments require the greatest effort. So I'll conclude with that. And Allie, I'll turn it over to you to guide us through any questions that may have come in.
Okay, sounds good. First question is, due to retrogression, can one move to the Gulf to practice while still on Q?
Yes, that's a great question, and I'm glad it came in. The answer is absolutely yes. And this is an area in which Worldwide Health Staff Solutions has started to strongly support applicants. And we've done that by establishing client relationships across the Gulf region, devoting staff resources, technology resources, et cetera, to help support us in this effort. So if an applicant is interested in further developing their skills, making some progress for themselves economically, perhaps, and has an interest in opportunities in the Gulf, we would absolutely encourage them to contact us. And Allie, if you could maybe put up Mark Bennett's email in the chat, that would be probably the most direct way that applicants can get additional information.
Yep, I'll drop that in. Next question is, does Worldwide sponsor H-1B visas together with EB-3 visas?
Yeah. So not to avoid the question, but the H-1B program currently is essentially shut down as it relates to healthcare. So, the answer to the question prior to the $100,000 fee being implemented, it would have been yes. Worldwide Health Staff Solutions did, on a limited basis, work with employers that were interested in using the H-1B program in their recruitment efforts. Unless that $100,000 fee is removed, we don't see any U.S. healthcare employer going forward using the H-1B program for registered nurses. The challenge, the new challenges are not only this $100,000 fee per application, per new application. The way in which the lottery will be conducted has also been changed. So the lottery will now be weighted, entries will be weighted based on the wage rate that's being offered to the applicant. And bear in mind that the H-1B visa program is not just being used by healthcare employers, it is, but it's also being used by the large US tech companies, right? Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, et cetera, as well as employers in other parts of the US economy. So there's a great demand for H-1B visas through the lottery process. And now applicants will not be selected in that process at random. Rather, they'll be selected through a process that is weighted in favor of those applicants that are earning higher, being offered a higher rate of pay. So not to get too deep in the weeds, but just very, very quickly, the H-1B lottery will have 4 different, what they call prevailing wage rates, so wage bands, with the lowest being 1 and the highest being 4. Now, registered nurses in the US are well paid, but they are not as well paid as AI engineers and software engineers and some of the other high-tech type of occupations. And if your H-1B application is at a tier 1 or level 1 wage rate, essentially they're doing this using a ticketing system. So if you have an application that is at the prevailing wage rate level 1, you will be entered into the lottery with 1 ticket. If you are, just use the example, an AI engineer that's working on cutting edge technology, and you're being offered a very high salary, your application will be entered into the lottery with 4 tickets. So the weighting is not equal going forward as it has been in the past. So long answer to a short question, are we doing H-1B visas right now? The answer is no. If anybody is telling you that they can file new H-1B applications for you, and if they're asking you to contribute any amount to that process financially, write this down, run. Don't walk, run, because you're headed for grave disappointment and probably economic harm. We're watching to see what's going to happen with the H-1B program. We hope that $100,000 fee at least will be removed prior to the lottery season. Of course, for cap-exempt employers, the lottery system isn't the issue, but the $100,000 fee is. So again, until that $100,000 fee is removed, we don't see anyone moving forward with H-1B new H-1B applications for registered nurses.
And then the next question is, any advice on how to start NCLEX preparation?
Yeah, so great question. So I think the answer depends a little bit on where you're located in the world, and also on what your personal circumstances are. If you are in a location and your schedule permits you to attend an in-person or in-classroom instruction program, I think that would be ideal. I appreciate that for many candidates, that's not a viable option. So there are some very excellent online programs that are available for nurses that they can access regardless of where they're at in the world, and they can work through that on their own schedule. I would encourage I would encourage individuals to consider the Archer review program, also to consider the Rachel Allen review program. Both offer online options. And there's a few others there. There are different price points. But I think the key to preparing for NCLEX, above all else, is preparation. And there's some great resources available to help you do that.
The next question is, how long does the DOL take to certify documents usually?
Well, again, it depends what type of documents. If we're talking about prevailing wage applications in support of EB3 nurse petition filings, a new prevailing wage application can take anywhere from 5 to 6 months. That's probably what our guest is asking about. Other DOL documents related to other occupations, have different processing times. But currently, the prevailing wage application that has to go through the Department of Labor, we're looking at 5 to 6 months for new applications. That's only an issue when an employer first comes on board. Once a prevailing wage determination has been received, we then work together with our clients to ensure that that remains active at all times. But an initial new application, 5 to 6 months.
Okay. And are you able to file for immigration for the countries who have been banned entry to the U.S.?
Yeah, so there's no restriction against filing those types of petitions, but practically speaking, particularly for those countries that are subject to a full travel ban, we would not advise any employer to file that petition just because of the great uncertainty around that. It's unfortunate for applicants as individuals, to find themselves in that position if they're from one of the fully banned countries. So the answer is we're not encouraging or supporting. In fact, we're advising our clients that filing petitions for applicants from fully banned countries at this time is not a wise decision.
Okay. And then the last question is, do you think there'll be any positive developments for international nurses in 2026?
Yeah, so I do. I think I started saying that our team was optimistic for the year ahead, right? So if we look just at what we know today, much of which I've covered today, I think that gives us reason for optimism. The fact that U.S. healthcare employers continue to recruit gives us a reason for optimism. Some of you may be familiar with the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. That continues to be in front of Congress. That could be very, very beneficial for international nurses and physicians, and could very, very positively impact processing times. So there's some reason for optimism there. But the bottom, I think if I were to sum it all up, right, we continue to provide a service together with our applicants that U.S. healthcare employers urgently need as they look at how it is they're going to deal with this ongoing and growing supply and demand imbalance in the workforce. So processing times can be concerning. They're concerning to us, they're concerning to applicants, they're concerning to employers. But the bottom line is a solution is needed. I believe, and international candidates offer probably the best solution to adding to the net supply of the workforce. We're continuing to invest in our business in technology. If you're an existing applicant, you would already have been invited to join our new app. Really, the first of its kind in our industry. We continue to develop that technology and other technologies to support our clients. So we're not hesitating. We're not sort of pausing in any way. We continue to invest strongly in our business, both in technology and people and process. And we look forward to many, many hundreds of international nurses arriving in the US, maybe even in excess of 1,000, arriving in the US this year, and many, many more in years to come.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. Any other updates that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, just one thing real quick, Allie, that I will share with our guests here is that I will be traveling to the Philippines here in the very near future. I will be attending the Philippine Nurse Association Global Summit in Manila later this month. And earlier that same week, I'll be working with our teams in Manila and also participating in some open house types of events. So if anybody that's joined us today or is viewing this recording before the last week in January, I'd like to extend my personal invitation to join us, to meet me, whether it's at our office in Manila, or if you're going to be at the PNA Global Conference, I'd love to say hello and meet you there. So Allie's going to share, again, another email address here where you can connect with us to say, you know, I'd like more information about these opportunities. And hopefully I'll have the opportunity of meeting some of you in person soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. And then I'm also going to be sharing some links about connecting with us on our Facebook and our YouTube. All of our webinar recordings are posted on our YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe. That way you get updated. If you missed any part of this webinar, you can go back and watch. And then I'm also going to plug our Refer a Nurse program. For every nurse that you refer, you can earn $250. So I'll drop that link in the chat as well. And any other closing thoughts, Ron?
No, Allie, I think we've covered a lot today. I hope that by sharing this historical perspective and trying to understand it in the context of where we're at today, that this has been helpful to our viewers and to our guests. We remain committed to bringing both the clinician and the employer community interesting information, useful information through these types of webinars over the course of 2026. The best way to stay informed on the upcoming webinar topics that we'll be presenting on is through our social media channels. I'm excited for a couple of very important presentations that I'll be leading here coming up in the next 3 to 6 weeks. There's a couple of those. I hope you'll be able to join me. We've got some exciting news to share at that time. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Allie, thanks for your support today. I wish everyone a great rest of your day. I wish you a great 2026. Best of luck to you, and we look forward to